Hello everyone, my name is Javier Ruiz. I'm CAO at Intelligent Business Process Automation Solutions Group, and I'm going to show a quick demo of how our bots can interface with REST APIs to be able to do different types of automation. So if you look at an earlier video in our YouTube channel, you will see that we had a process that loaded customer data into this web front end. And in that demo, we actually demo how our bot would insert the data via the web front end. And as you may know, a lot of web front ends will obviously change over time. And when that happens, then the automation obviously needs to be updated. The other issue that you have is when you're using a web front end to do certain work and you're basically mimicking what the human does, that still can be slow because depending on what you're doing, you could be looking at several clicks, maybe several different screens, and that will obviously slow down the bot as it's doing work. So what you'd want to do in that particular case is see if that web application or desktop application has some type of REST API that we can interface into and be able to make requests for gets and puts and post and delete. That way you can interface directly with that application and not need to worry about using any type of web front end or GUI. So what we have in this particular demo is we have an Excel file, and let me open it up. The Excel file has a list of customers that need to be loaded. There's 104 of them. We had a particular case like this with one of our customers that needed to get the data extracted out of the Excel file and loaded. So we already had the bot that was doing it via the web front end, but we found, hey, what can we do here to kind of speed this up? In this particular case, the customer had an Oracle Apex application, and Oracle's Apex comes with the configuration so you can activate the REST API. So in this case, in this demo, we're showing you what was mimicked in that customer's system. This is the Apex demo customer application that comes when you install Apex. So we set that up so we can kind of mimic what we were doing. And what we are going to show is the bot coming in here and getting all these rows from this Excel file and then taking them via the REST API and loading it into this system and not using the web front end. Okay, so pretty straightforward. One thing that we are doing here is in the uh, demo that we showed with the web front end, the bot was extracting it out of an email and pulling down the Excel file, then opening it. In this particular case, we're going to do what's called human in the loop. When the bot starts processing, it'll pop up a box and ask the customer what operation are you wanting to perform, and it'll be just basically choosing I want to insert or I want to delete. In this particular case, we're going to do an insert. Then it's going to ask what is the Excel file that you want me to look at. So I'm going to run the bot now, and in a minute it will start the bot runner. Okay, so this is now the operation selection that we've created, and this is we're using our partner's product from ElectroNeek. And we are going to select, in this case, insert new customer, and we're going to click OK. Then it's going to request which Excel file we want, and we want this one here. And now it's going to start running. And now it has begun inserting customers. If we hit the refresh here on this site, you should start seeing the customers loading. So we're already up to company 10 that's been loaded into this web application. This should take maybe under 2 minutes to load the 104 customers. So like I was saying, what this is going to help whenever you have an application or a web application that has a REST API, then there's faster ways to program the RPA to use that REST API than to be showing the bot how to click on this button, then open up the next screen. Then inside that screen, you have 5 different fields that you would need to configure that bot. For example, right, in the other video, you would have seen us clicking this add button. That would bring up the customer screen. Then we were putting customer name, selecting several of these fields, adding some customer description, then hitting the add customer button so it would complete that. Then we were coming back here and clicking it again depending on how many customers. In this particular case, we're not doing any of that. We've programmed the HTTP request to be able to take each row of that Excel file and used the REST API put method to insert the data. And at this point we've completed. So we have 104 now showing up in here. If we click it, you would see it has filled out the 5 fields that we've requested it to fill out. And that's all been done from the back end. Okay. So now let's minimize this and we will pull up the studio where we actually programmed the bot to do this, so you get a little bit of understanding of how we did that. So first is the selection of the actual operation that you saw. So you got an input, that's where we're asking, do you want to do an insert, delete, and then we're putting that variable in here. And then the next is selecting the file and then putting that into a variable. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Now we call another subprogram, which this would actually read the Excel file and load all that into this variable that becomes then a JSON of all the data that's been extracted. Okay. In this particular case, this is where we have our if statement, and that's based on the operation that was selected, which is whether an insert or it was a delete. In this case, in what we're saying here is, did they select insert new customer? No, then we know it's delete. So let's go look here at what we're doing in when they select an insert. Okay, so we got our API URL that we're passing down to the bot. This is where it's going into the Excel file and extracting each row. And then as it gets each row, we're loading each particular column up to a variable: customer name, customer status, customer category, the industry, geographic, and the description. And from there, we have our HTTP request. As you can see, ElectroNeek has done a very good job in making it very simple to bring in your URL. Okay, then what type of method? In this case, we're doing a get, because the first thing we want to do is the customer that we're about to insert already exist? So we're doing a get, and then the authorization header in this case is basic, which we're using a username and password. But if you want to do more or other forms of authorization, you can do auth 2.0, where you can get a token, and that is straight out of the box without having to do all kinds of programming. And then there's a lot of other things where you can do more advanced configuration where you may have that. So in this particular case that we have, we chose to do basic so we could just demo it quickly. So from that request, it pulls it into a variable, and from that variable now it's just a JSON that then we can interrogate the data and be able to use that data for something else. So we're assigning found customer, which is the response, and the count. And the reason we're getting count is because that return from the HTTPS will have a count of 0 or 1. In that particular case, if it's greater than 0, then don't do nothing because that customer exists. If it's not greater than 0, then we're running the subprogram to now insert, and this is where we insert the data. First thing we're doing is we are doing a text found. The reason is if you saw in some of the the customer industry, they have an at or ampersand. Sorry, it's an ampersand, and ampersand in an API call is like a or. So we have to actually do a conversion of the ampersand. In this particular case, we're telling if you find an ampersand, then replace it with %26. Then the API knows that that ampersand needs to be a part of that. So that this is where we can do certain changes to the data as we find it from the JSON and bring it in and then pass that down. So in this particular case, we have the URL and we're pulling in the HTTP, and this is where you see now we are calling our post URL and then passing in all the different data that we've extracted, and then we're doing the post method in this case. Okay, and then you will still have an HTTP response on that. So if you wanted to write something that says, oh, it failed to post, then you'd get what is it, a 500 error, 400 error, something like that, that then you can program it to say, if I get this error message, then do this. If I get this error message, maybe retry this, who knows. So that would be the insert. So the other thing that I would show you is, let's go down the other path. If it's not an insert, it's a delete, and then you can see it's a very similar case. We are still pulling in the data. Now we're only needing the customer name instead of all of the other fields, and the HTTP request is a little bit different, because obviously we're going to do a get first to find out, does that customer even exist. Okay, the customer does exist, and we want to delete it. So now make the HTTP method a delete, and in this particular case we pass the URL and give it the customer name, and it'll delete it. Okay, so that's pretty it. That's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. Um, ElectroNeek's HTTP request activity makes it very simple to build this type of automation very quickly, and the capability of being able to interface with a lot of the different APIs that exist out there, right? There's really, once there's an API, there's really nothing you holding back to be able to write some automation that just directly interfaces with that API. So I hope you find this video useful. If you're a customer out there that has a need like this, it doesn't have to be this particular case, but if you have a process out there where, either on a daily basis, weekly basis, you're getting these huge Excel files, and, it is too time consuming to take the data out there and manually go insert it in some web front end or desktop application, reach out to us. We do demos for free, and we also do 30-day trials for free, so that way we can show you the power of our automation and what it can do to save you time and money.